I'm here instead of McMaster because they didn't offer me full-time work and Mohawk did.
Oh, awesome.
So
So you don't have to have a job on the side. Sweet.
well, I mean, who in the audience believes firmly in their heart that contract work sucks?
Maybe.
Yeah. Contract work sucks. Full-time is the desired end state of
Well, sure.
contract
Benefits
work.
and everything goes, sure. Yeah.
Right, yeah, like dental, etc. Well, actually, I did have dental. It's a unionized position, so the benefits weren't too bad, but you get a pension here and stuff, you know. Also, I get to take things like paternity leave, you know, like I'm going to be doing this summer because my wife's having a baby, so. I don't know, did I tell you guys that?
Is that number 3?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, my wife's having a kid in early May. It'll be May 10th is the due date, so you know we're getting close.
That's 2 or 3?
This will be number 3.
That's what I thought. You already
Yeah.
have
So anybody who wishes to see cute pictures of my children may approach me after class. But during class, we should learn Java instead of looking at cute photos. In summary, with respect to deadlines, we're right, and if anybody else disagrees, they're wrong.
Okay.
That's easy. And just to recapitulate, I let the assignment deadline for assignment out by 3 days, so it's now due on March 9th, in virtue of the fact that we have not yet fully completed the material for this week. It's, you know, we will have by the end of today.
So March
For sure.
9th is the Saturday?
Yes, yeah. And of course, if you want to use late days on top of that, that you may, of course, do so. Yeah, like, I know that the schedule is kind of aggressive, but honestly, like, the late day policy, like, I think is like a lot of forgiveness.
So,
You know.
full late days, we could hit it in Tuesday at midnight then.
Yeah, but please don't. I hate marking an assignment like 3 times because people have submitted at different times, you know? But that's okay. So, that's just my personal preference. So getting back into graphical user interfaces, the thing I was about to say is that essentially we have now all of the tools in place that we need to complete the assignment. We actually got all of those conceptually in place in the last class. What we missed was like practical examples and practice. So the focus of this lesson will be practical examples and practice. Sound good?
Yep.
So, this is what I want all of you to make for me, all right? I want you to make me a simple calculator. I don't want you to make me a full calculator because by the time you've done buttons 1, 2, and 3, you should reasonably be able to do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, right? It's really the differential button capabilities that are interesting to me, right? So, I want you to make a calculator with the following buttons. All right? First, you should have a text box. All right? This text box will be your display. The expectation is that you will be outputting things to it rather than reading things from it. The purpose for this is like just to make it look like a calculator, right? The text box kind of looks like the calculator LCD screen, so and you can use them for input and output. Aside from that, I want you to add 6 buttons. 1, 2, and 3, plus, minus, and equals. Now, the thing that I want you to do is I want you to make this thing behave like a pocket calculator, right? I want you to reproduce that functionality. So, when we have a pocket calculator, if the value in the display is 12, what happens if I hit the 3 button?
Three gets added to the right.
Right. The new value, if you get 3, is 1, 2, 3. Right? What happens if you press the plus button?
There was no previous input, nothing.
If there was no previous input, nothing. But if I have 1, 2, 3 and I hit plus, does the display change?
No.
Nope. So the display is still 1, 2, 3, but what if I hit the 2 button?
Not
What
yet.
happens?
1, 2, 3 plus 2, so 1, 2, 5.
Not yet.
No,
Not yet?
You need
Not
the
yet.
you need to hit the equals button to
Oh,
actually
yeah.
calculate it, right?
it
So
becomes
if you
two.
hit the 2,
Two.
this gets erased and replaced with 2,
Yeah.
right? If you enter another number, you get, you add to the number the same way, and then if you press the equals sign, you get the sum of the 2, which in this case would be 144. Right? So, this is what I want you to reproduce. I'll even give you a hint. You will need only 3 variables. For like, the 5-star 12 out of 10 implementation of this, right? If you want to do just basic get things calculating, that's also good practice, but I'm going to also take this opportunity to show you how a pocket calculator works, like in the guts of it. So, just because it's kind of interesting. So, I'll just get you started here. Recap from last week. Let's create our new Java project. Oh, and just one final note on assignments. You'll notice that assignment 7 has a due date which is offset by 2 weeks from assignment 6.
Because of test 2, right?
Because of test 2, exactly. So test 2 is occurring in this block. So just like with assignment 3, you are being given a 2 weeks to complete assignment 7 and 1 week to complete assignment. Well, actually, that looks like that's 2 weeks as well, doesn't it?
Looks good.
That
Yeah.
looks like I'll catch up.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. So
That's where they'll catch up too.
Yeah. I expect good assignment 8s out of all of you. So create a new. Oh, let me just increase the font size. I can't. There. All right. New Java class. Call it Simple Calc. Right? Now, the thing you'll want to do is to pull in our example code, the starter code, the template, whatever you want to call it. So inside week 7 2 example code, save that zip file, decompress the archive, there you go. Open up your GUI graphics template with, just Notepad is fine. Copy the contents. Go back to IntelliJ, paste the contents, delete the package, change the class name to match your selected class name in your list of classes. Simple help. Incidentally, if I receive any assignment 5 submissions that include all of the to-dos, and this is where you create your components, I shall be disappointed. I shall be severely disappointed that you left the default comments in. So, Sam Scott doesn't even work here anymore. So, let's go through the process of adding one button just to review that process, and then I will leave the rest of it to you folks. Sound good? So, the first thing that we should do is declare instance variables for all of our GUI components. Up here. So, we need 6 buttons and a text display. So I'm just going to do one of those, which is a button. Very, very important. Please remember to select javafx.scene.control, like so. The other way of going about this is to import javafx.scene.control.star, which imports everything from the JavaFX scene control library. So in theory, it should link automatically and not give you any troubles with trying to import AWT instead. So we have button 1, there we go. We have a button. The next thing we need to do is instantiate this button. That is done inside of the start method.
Why not just up there?
Less dynamic. So the the face value of the button is a string which is passed into the constructor. Typically in this class we hard code that, but there's no reason that we should need to hard code that, right? So if you find it repetitive to write, button 1, button 2, button 3, initiate, 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 you can actually throw all of your buttons into a button array and initiate all of them, using loops and good programming and all of that. We're probably not going to do that because, it makes it complicated and we're trying to keep this as a lighter week, But you can't use loops or if statements or anything up there, right? And this is the type of thing that you may need to do conditionally at some point. So, also, I kind of just have a personal preference for not initializing anything up there. To my mind, you should only do that when you have to, and the only time you ever have to is if it's static, and you want it initialized before any objects are created. So, it's like, does it technically work? Yes. Is it my preferred way of doing things? No. Are people going to do it anyway? Of course, So, we want to initialize our button. Button 1 is equal to new button.
Professor,
Text is 1, yes?
I don't know what's wrong, but I tried loading my account on both these PCs and the PC just hangs off.
Like your Mohawk ID?
Yeah, kind of. So this hanged up like that, and there the canvas is not moving.
Huh.
What do I do?
Try this one. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
How can you do that when you can't turn it on?
Hmm?
How can you do that when you can't turn it on?
I mean, they all have a power cable in the back,
PC
right?
itself, yeah.
Yeah, they all have a power cable in the back. What you do is you force an involuntary reboot cycle, which is to say you intentionally crash the computer. So, we create a new button. That button's name is text. Or, no, sorry, the button's text is 1. The button's name is button 1. We then have to say, I always forget this line. It's like root.getChildren.add all, and then button 1, like that. I think that's correct. At this point, you now have the ability to run the application, view what the output looks like, so that you can make sure you've done everything correct up to this point. Test early, test often. If you're not testing, it's probably wrong. Yes?
Would it be better or worse to use char instead of string?
Use, what do you mean,
Like character instead of string
where? Where am I using string?
for the tags.
Oh, might not even like it.
Okay.
No, it's expecting string. So, you need to cleanse yourself of this Python nonsense of an equivalency between characters and strings. They're not the same thing. Do not confuse the data structure with the elements, the type of the elements of the data structure. Question?
Yeah, now it worked. Can you please tell me where you declared button?
Just at the top as an instance variable. So, one of the things I expect you to do is to arrange the button nicely so that it looks like a calculator. That's part of the practice. I also expect that you to fit the window to the buttons that you're making. For extra points, you can get the buttons all the same size too. Right now the buttons will be sized according to the string that's in them. But I'm going to skip the fiddling around with it, except to mention that the method you want is relocate. Button 1.relocate. There you have it. You see it's not exactly in the corner anymore. Finally,
And what property do you use to set the size for the button?
it's preferred width. So if you do the programmer's favorite thing, which is scroll through the autocomplete, you'll find that you have things like, should be some set things here. Zoom. You've got set minimum height, minimum width, probably maximums as well.
We missed it.
Oh, did I miss it? Yeah, I did. Set. Oh, no, it would be OP. Yeah. Set pref width.
Oh,
Yeah. So preferred width is different from like limited width in that I'm saying this is the size I would like it to be. If the string means that it needs to be bigger than that, it'll make it bigger than that. Yeah. So set pref width is also one that you will find useful. Now, let's write the event handler. This is a button, so we need an event handler. Public void button1 event handler. Sure. You need action event, also taken from the JavaFX library. There we go. You can see that action event is in a different location than scene.control. So you have to fight with AWT again for this one, basically. So action event. So this is where you will insert calculator code. But since that is an exercise left for the reader, at the moment all I'm going to do is a simple console print. Which will indicate that the event system is in fact working. Question?
For the assignment, should we have stuff like that to print in console when a button is clicked?
It's not necessary to have that in the, no. I'm not marking for this.
Yeah.
This is, okay. This brings up an interesting and useful point, right? In the same way that in JavaScript, your actual web page itself is like the thing that you get marked on how it looks, right? And the console is like information about and provided by the developer for the purposes of development. The same distinction will be applied here. So the console inside of IntelliJ, I will consider that to be your own developer region. That's not part of like your presented product.
So if it's empty, it's fine.
If it's empty, it's fine. If it contains debug information, that's fine. If you decide to put part of your actual interface into it, that's a mistake. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Good.
is it only for assignment 5 or for assignment 4 as well?
Oh man.
Because in assignment 4 we have input and output, right? We are asking how many cards.
No, like basically in this course we do two varieties of application, right? We're doing console apps and we're doing these GUI apps. If it's a console app, then the console is your external interface and must be treated as such. But if you have a GUI as your external interface, then the console is now yours for development. Does that make sense? Good. So yeah, if it's a console app, I don't really want to see any debug information. Okay, so now we need to hook this up to the button. Button1.add, or I think it's on action, set on action, there it is, pardon me. Set on action, the default action associated with buttons is of course the click event. We then reference the function. This scope resolution operator, button 1 event handler, right there. There we go.
Could you repeat again, what does this code,
So what that's, I'm not 100% on this. What I believe it's doing is something similar to what it does in C++. The method, or the class functions as a namespace, right? So the button 1 event handler function name exists inside of the namespace associated with this object. So we're going through this to access the function name. Although I'm kind of interested, now that I say that, let me just demonstrate that this works, because I'm kind of wondering if this is even necessary. But there you go. Button 1 clicked, everything works. Let me see if it works without this. Nope. What do you, yeah, cannot resolve simple button 1.ph. There you go. So Java is just a little bit picky about how you access a function name. In JavaScript, you wouldn't need this colon, right? You'd just be able to use the function name directly. In languages like JavaScript and Python, if you use the function's name without providing any parameters, you are essentially using it as a function pointer, right? Or a function reference. So here, to get at, like this is expecting a function reference. The way that we get at the function reference now in Java is we have to resolve the scope first, which, you know, it's just another one of those lovely little ways where Java is just so much more verbose than every other programming language. But that's okay. You can always tell when you're doing a function reference. So anyway, there you have it. One button hooked up to an event. Now, make me a calculator. Go for it.
So you're missing the magic word, and then
Oh.
I was thinking the magic word is pseudo.
Sudo make me a calculator. No. This is what you do. This is what you do if somebody says sudo make me a sandwich, right? You say, okay, what's your root password? Not named your function, same thing. Copy that. Copy. Paste. Oh, yeah, you're using AWT as well. You must select Java. Otherwise, you're trying to combine things from multiple libraries. And see, this has resolved. One second. First. Yes, you've loaded Java AWT by accident as well. When you get the otherwise you're trying to load different things from incompatible libraries. same thing that you would apply like fill, rectangle, those sorts of things. It has one for drawing images, it does not do that. Let me take a look at the template, see if we've got that in there. So this is actually something we're going to be covering in the next section. Basically, in addition to all of these things, there's another GUI component called a canvas, and that allows you to draw things. So,
I was just getting good at Canvas, and now we're on GUI stuff.
I mean, don't worry, canvases are coming back. So if you have like an interface window, you can declare a canvas as a subcomponent of the window where you can like draw your pretty pictures. Right? Up to now, this thing has been like the same size as the entire window. So it's looked like this is all the windows being this entire time, but it's actually like you can set a frame out, put stuff in there, and also have like, you know, a ticker along the bottom and like buttons and whatever you want. Oh,
images already?
And you'd like them submitted through Canvas,
Yeah.
basically? Yeah, okay, so this is the process, right? And it might be of general interest for me to draw your everyone's attention to this, as I'm still getting issues with people submitting image files through Canvas. This is how you do it, all right? You take your image file, let's say it's uml.png, although any image file would do in this case, right? You open it up in File Explorer, right-click, rename, right? Add .txt, submit. Do nothing else.
Two things.
What?
You should have view file extensions click enabled on your operating system.
Yes.
And if
absolutely.
Windows doesn't tell you that changing the file name is going to screw up the file, you're doing it wrong. Windows
Yes.
will always say, if you change the file name, you're going to make this file unreadable. You
Which
want to
is
see
bullshit. Yes. Because
That. It's not. It
it's-
just
yeah.
changes the default program that uses to read it. That's all.
Precisely. I don't know how much time I have collectively spent trying to undo the training that the Windows operating system has intended to inculcate in everyone, because they're just telling you BS, right? So,
But that should pop up every
Yes.
single time.
thank you for that. To reiterate that, if you're doing this in Windows, make sure that you have View File Extensions clicked. In fact, I will show you where that is right now.
It will not work properly unless you have that clicked.
Yes, so if you go View, View tab, File Name Extensions, click that, there you go, there are all your file extensions. This is also true for Java, right? Basically, what Windows does in the absence of this is it will hold the file extension constant and consider you to be renaming the front part without renaming the file extension. So, if you don't view the file extensions, you will end up with uml.txt.png when what you
Yes.
want is with these two swapped,
Yes.
right? And this will not submit on Canvas, but this will, because Canvas is filtering by file extension. File extensions don't exist. They're fake, they're made up. You can make up your own.
Sure.
Absolutely So file extensions only have two purposes, all right? The first purpose of the file extension is to tell the operating system what program to open this file with by default. The operating system will not prevent a program that shouldn't be able to open this file from opening it. Like, I can open a PNG in a browser, no problem, right?
You can open it in Word too, if you wanted to.
Exactly. Well, Word is okay. All right, guys. Here's some fun facts. Do you know what Word files actually are? Well, they're text files, yeah. But what's like the format? Yeah.
I was just gonna say some text file.
It's got some crappy markup.
So
language.
plain text. So files come in two varieties, right? Binary files and plain text files. So to say something is a plain text file is to say almost nothing about it, except that it's not a binary file. It's XML.
That's what I thought, it's got a markup language.
Yeah, if you take a look at,
What the bold, what the,
yeah, they might, like, in the new versions, they might, like, do a little bit of encryption on it or something, because, you know, or compression. But baseline, what is a Word document? It's XML. Period.
that's actually pretty smart.
PDFs are quite a bit more complicated. Did you know that you can have three-dimensional rotating models inside of PDF documents?
Nope.
You can't print them, but you can have them in a PDF document. PDF is actually a very, very, like, there's a huge number of amount of things crammed into PDF. But anyway, so the point I'm trying to make. All right, so that's first purpose of file extensions. It tells the operating system what to open the program with. The second purpose of the file extension is programs will sometimes filter the file for a correct file extension before opening it, right? You know, if Word opens a .txt file, it's like, oh, this is plain text, so I'm going to put it inside of my XML and give you that, right? There's a different procedure based on what this file says it contains, right? But there's also a difference between what it says it contains and what it actually contains. Here, we are saying that it is plain text, but in fact it's actually a binary file, right? So, and this is the problem people keep running into, is like, if you are renaming the file by opening it in Notepad and saving it as a .txt, you are opening a binary file and then character encoding it and then submitting it to me as a character encoded text file instead of binary file. So what it looks like on my end is that you have a image file that's completely corrupted and can't be opened. Which is true, you have corrupted the image file, right? Okay, and there is one third sneaky Linux reason for having file extensions, and that's it makes it easier to find things, right? In Linux, it's reasonably, like, finding all files with a particular file extension is like stupidly fast and easy. It always baffles me that, like, the search function in Windows takes, like, literally 6 days to complete a search, right? Because in Linux, it's like, well, you know, maybe if Microsoft could program a damn file system, it wouldn't take 6 days to search it, you know. Unlike beautiful, wonderful, godly Linux, which uses, you know, intelligence and good design and probably B trees to organize the file system in such a way that you can search it quickly and easily. Anyway, that's my rant about file extensions. Does that answer your question? Okay. Did you get it working?
I forgot that went in
working is like our standard of perfection in IT, right? So.
I'm sorry, that's the way to do it.
Such a stupid question.
Yeah,
Alright.
but you said this is bad form, declare instancing it up here. So, where should I instance this? Because if I do it in here, it just resets it to blank string.
Yeah. And start
Okay.
at the top. Start.
Now, there's some other things. These are instance variables, but they're not public or private. Does that mean that they're protected?
Yes.
Okay.
Which, you know, since this is like the top level module, you could argue like it doesn't really matter whether it's public or private, you know. But is it just me or is it obvious?
I think it might be just you. And now, when I click on the button, it sends event E to the handle.
So
Look, I'm just trying to.
yeah.
So I click on this button, action this, and it sends. It
So-
calls this.
So you know, it basically works exactly the
that
same
is-
as
And that is expecting action event E. What is E? Is it an array that contains a bunch of information about the event that triggered it?
yeah, well, not an
Is it an
array, but it's an
object?
object containing that information.
How do I access the information in that object?
Using dot syntax.
Okay. Now, what will it tell me? Will it tell me what button is clicked and like coordinates on the screen where it was clicked and all that jazz?
Yeah, pretty much.
And I can name E anything I want. I can name it event if I, because E is
Yes.
a very.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you can just fire them. That's interesting. Alright, yeah. Let's see here.
And E will just have a bunch of methods that I use to get the information that's contained in the object. Okay.
I forget the,
I know it's beyond the scope of this lesson.
yeah, but it won't be by the end of the course.
Okay. Thank you.
No trouble. Ah, here we go. That's why I couldn't find it. Okay, so action event is one type of event. But we've got more than just the one type of events. We also have mouse events, drag events, key events, scroll events, and touch events, which all could be used like,
So I could be using mouse event instead of action event for a button click?
yeah, but I think you would set that up with a different method.
Okay.
So you would say something like,
Yeah, it'd be
button one dot set on,
mouse whatever,
yeah, like
mouse down or something. There it is, okay.
mouse clicked, and
Okay.
then it would pass the corresponding event type to the event handler, and that's how you would get things like, okay, the mouse clicked the canvas, but where? Right?
Yep.
Again, this is stuff that we do
And it's,
later.
and the where would be relative to 0, 0, wherever you have that set in the top left corner.
Yeah, I think it would be relative, I don't know if
Because
it's
it's not looking at the whole screen, just where your GUI area is.
I believe it's relative to the canvas, yeah. Alright,
I'm trying to like different stuff now. No.
This one's open. So you need to.
I don't think it's the way he wants to do it, but I figured I got a way to do it.
so. Yeah. But it isn't very complex. So yeah, you're creating the Oh, that's it, yes, these are two chapters. Oh, yeah. I have to see the gotcha as well. So
Yes, you're.
this one works, and this one doesn't. Yes. Interesting. That's it. It's all being overwritten into element 0. That's why element 1 doesn't exist. There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Boom.
I don't think it's split.
Yeah, it might want you to include the package statement. Yeah, but on the other hand, you're now running into conflicts. So in Java, if you put something in a folder, it expects you to use the package system in an edited file, you say where it is in the directory structure. Probably you can keep 2 names in different namespaces. The packaging, if you put it, if the package statement will put it in a different namespace, I believe. So,
Perfect.
well, yeah, you would need weekly.oop.source. But, again, it's just easier to that's my recommendation. You avoid this problem in its entirety if you. And you have a question?
I just want to set that.
A logic. Yeah.
I did it. Really good.
So, assignment 5 requires you to have a well-known way to
There's like a clear text.
Right, this is-
clear text.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a little too classic, close to an inquiry. No, you need, you need a separate model class, you need something with a little path, right? It needs, vending machine works, yeah, absolutely. If, you can do pretty much anything for your model that you want, right? We also did a bunch of in-class examples for you remember the TV interface and the RPG character and that type of thing. You could do an
I swear that
exercise
works
for
great.
some of those as well,
Just
right?
Me?
You can work on
Is that the
that.
name of your text?
This one isn't gonna have any model or finish on it, so, yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
You wanted it where we hit the plus button, it deletes the text.
Yeah, because I'm an idiot.
No, it doesn't until the next button press.
Oh, I guess it would.
Yeah.
Being dumb, Boom, thank you.
Like,
And get the number.
if you're curious about it, how it works, grab a pocket calculator, and that's your model. That's what you're trying to model.
Using this. Is there any
That
way
displaying is the hard part.
of me getting
What can get?
Maybe it just doesn't display this.
so like on station, sending an action,
So if I just click,
I,
feel that button.
I'm assigning it to an array,
Yes.
and my brain's like, if I'm pressing the button, I should, the action should go
That should work.
I would think, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, source.
but you need to save that information to a variable, right? Because you're gonna have to add it stuff.
I figure I have to do that. I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
I
actually.
hadn't got that far. It's
Yeah.
one display.
If it's just returning an object, then, yeah, actually, that is. Yeah.
It's probably the smartest way to do it.
Well, fingers crossed, but
Yeah. What's the error?
I think it's just you can't say but with the button object.
Yeah, just, it's like, what do you want me to do with this?
Alright, it's a little silly, but I can work with it.
I think, yeah, thanks. Actual, but term.
Alright, it's not actually. I'll figure it out from here.
Oh, yeah, we're, it won't be too long before we enter into the magical world of casting objects as other object types. Get in there. Well, yeah, we don't have to put a button. You're getting there though, yeah, this is the right track. Okay. All right, folks. Most of you have made it to the logic. Some of you have made a stab at the logic. I'd like to go through the logic. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. So, calculators are simple electronic devices. They are an arithmetic logic unit connected to a few simple registers. Register is basically a piece of hardware that's only the size of a single variable, which you set and reset electronically using electrical signals. I know you guys haven't done any electronics at all, but I actually used to teach electronics at the university, so I know a little bit about this kind of stuff. And I wanted to impart some of it to you. So, here's what we need, right? Let's say, let's map what happens to various registers when certain buttons are pressed, right? So, let's say that the button press is in this column, and certainly, if we have nothing else, the display needs to come from somewhere, right? So, let's make a display register or a display variable. The thing about registers and variables is that they are basically the same thing. Your system, like your RAM, is just a very large array of registers, which is a bit slower than actual register memory, which typically is inside of the CPU. So, if we hit 1, display goes, let's say display is initially blank. It could also be initially 0, but let's just go with blank for now. display becomes 1. If we hit 2, display becomes 1, 2. If we hit 3, display becomes 1, 2, 3. Now, what's interesting is what happens when we start pressing operation buttons. Most people, I think, can get this far without too much difficulty, right? All you do is you multiply this by 10 and add the face value of the button. Simple, right? So we can say, so number button display equals display times 10 plus face value, which of course we would substitute for whichever the whatever the face value of the button is that was pressed, right? 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, etc. Pseudocode. So, what happens when we hit plus? The display does not change, right? So an operation button does not change the display, right? At least it doesn't change the output. Functionally, we know that when we start entering numbers again, this thing has been reset at this point. Pressing the plus button resets the value here. So, this is a point where what is actually output is a bit different from what is read, what is the internal state of the memory. So, in terms of internal memory, we can consider an operation button, right? Op button will 0 display. Making sense so far? Maybe? I'm going to keep going anyway. So, now, yes, question?
Why don't display 1, 2, 3 plus instead of 0?
Because that's not how a calculator works. Right? So, we can also say, like, output, like the actual LCD display goes 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, and 3. All this means is that number button updates output, but an operation button does not. Right? When I press the operation button, the internal memory is cleared, but the display is not updated. So it still holds its previous value to the next state. Yes?
Shouldn't the last number be 23?
Yes, thank you. Sorry. 23, 23. Also, I'm starting to...
Oh, the button would be 3, but display would be 23.
Precisely. Oh, yeah. 2, and this display would be 23. Yes, thank you. Pardon me. There we go. So, now, what happens if we hit, and I know I'm doing like input in the middle and output on this side, which is terrible, but, you know, typically the output column should be over here, but, you know, whatever. What happens when we hit the equals sign?
146?
Yes. So our output becomes 146. But what happens to the internal state?
Register.
Right? So that also becomes 146 because you can then add more numbers to it, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. Once you've once you've hit equals, you can then use that as the next number and like
That's
say
your pants.
plus and then add another number to it. So the internal state will be updated to whatever the display state is. But what we're doing is we're taking this value and we're taking this value and we are combining them in a mode appropriate to the operator selected here. Right? So, equals button, we know it's going to have to update display. Update output, pardon me. It's going to also have to update the value of the display register, right? Both of these things are updated, but what information do we need to update them? Right? We need to know this. That's not an issue. That's the previous state, right? We can read that easily. But you can't look at the values of registers historically. You can't just say, oh, I need the value that this register was like 4 entries ago and just jump there in history because that's like time travel. You can't do it, right? What you need to do is you need to keep additional registers to store previous information. So, we also need this guy. This needs to be stored to a register. So, let's make a new register and call it storage. Right? We don't care what it is up to this point, but when you press this button, this value in display gets copied to storage. So, the operation button copies display to storage. It then holds that value until it's modified again. Right? Well, let's not worry too much about what happens here just yet. Right? The other piece of information that we need is what operation we are performing. We need this here. We need to store an operation code. When this button is hit, we store plus. Now, what you would actually do is you'd store an op code. That is to say, you'd say like, plus is 1, subtraction is 2, right? And then you'd use numbers. There's no reason to use characters here, right? But that means that when we arrive at this equals operation, we now have all of the pieces of information we need to actually perform the calculation. Question?
What if you wanted to minus a number after you, so that 23, what if after that you hit minus, add in a new number? Would it be plus, comma, minus on the op?
So, let's go through it, all right? So let's assume that the equals button does not change these, all right? If we press minus, what we have so far, copy display to storage, copy display to storage, store opcode,
I mean,
Right.
like before you hit enter, you wanted to do a second operator.
Ah, yes. That's a good question. That's like I need to undo history to do that. So let's just do this one,
Okay.
and then we can address that point. All right. If we hit negative, we store the opcode as well, right? And then we zero display, and then you can enter your values, and then press equals again, and then we, we have storage, we have the stored value -1, right? So it's 146 minus 1 equals 145, and 145 is now the value that's here and here. And I wasn't paying attention here, but 146, 145. That's how it would work here, right? And as you see, the way that this has been set up, we actually don't have to enter numbers in here, and it still works. So let's address your point that you were saying. What if we hit what if we enter multiple opcodes, right? Basically, we're going to address the dashes here, right? So let's say in display stored opcode output, right? Let's say we have 2 plus 2 plus 3 equals, right? So we're assuming initial states of 0, let's assume initial states of 0 for everything, right? So display becomes 2, right? Stored does not change, op does not change, output is 2, right? We hit plus, we store 2, opcode is now plus, output does not change, this is zeroed, right? We hit 2, display becomes 2, stored becomes 2, op is still plus, output is then 2, right? We then hit plus. So
If you just do the math on that before as if you were hitting equal, that would and it's
So-
equal.
So yeah, oh, and this would have to be calculate the thing, right? So the equals operation, calculate the thing, is implied in the operation button, right? So to hit plus, our display needs to be updated with 4, right? The stored value, like output is only ever updated with whatever is in here. You're just choosing whether you output it or not, right? So we update display to 4 by calculating this. There you go, right? We also at the same time store that value, right? And we overwrite, like, it works a little better if this is subtraction, because it makes it look like it's a different opcode, so it looks different, right? And then when we hit 3, or sorry, this is an opcode, so this is zeros, actually. We enter 3, stored is still 4, this is still negative, output is 3, then we hit the equals sign, we calculate 4 minus 3, store that in 1, This remains the same, output 1. So, yeah, now, if we're assuming this is 0, 0, 0, right? Yep, that's overwritten. Yep. Ah! You store equals as an opcode. If you store equals as an opcode, then you know that the previous operation was like, well, something like that. I'm forgetting how the end of this goes for the particular edge case.
I think I understand
Yeah.
that before you move on to a new operation or a new opcode, you
Mhm.
rule it out first, and then you just take that equal number and that goes into your storage.
Yeah. So let's quickly see if we can get something like a Java implementation working. I'm going to quickly do some stuff while this is booting, as we have precious little time.
5 minutes.
Oh, come on, we got 10 minutes. Button 3, button plus, button minus, button EQ. There we go. We have to initialize all of these. Two and 2, 3 and 3, minus, minus, plus, and plus, EQ equals. There we go. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I have to point 2 things out to you before we continue this. In the guide, I already kind of said it, but here we go. So, number 1, what does it mean to hook up a model to one of these? That means you initialize a model object inside of the start method, and you make that object an instance variable of the class, and it means you write buttons that do each of the methods, right? You have in the vending machine example, you have a button which adds a coin. You have a button which vends an item. You have a button which asks for the change back. You write a bunch of very simple handlers. All they're really doing is calling a method of the class, right? And that's it. Update the display appropriately. Call the method call the method. Take the output. Update the display with it. That's how you do it, right? Furthermore, there is one more component which is useful, which is a canvas. So, previously, when we had our JavaFX template, the whole thing was a canvas, right? We had a canvas that was the size of the entire thing. It's actually a subcomponent. You don't have to have a canvas that's the size of the entire thing. As you can see, this is a canvas in which a circle has been drawn. It is part of the form, not the entire form. it's good to change the background color on these, because the default background color for a canvas is the same as for the non-canvas areas of the form. If you don't draw a box around it or something like that, it'll get lost in the rest of the form and you won't be able to distinguish it or see it. So just keep that in mind. This is off-white, so if you make this white, that's one way of doing it. Alice blue works well for pretty much everything as well. So canvas, you initialize it with a width and a height. You then create a graphics context from the canvas, and you can call relocate on the canvas as well. So once you've declared it with a width and a height, you can move it around with relocate, and that's it. That's basically the whole rest of this week's guide. Those are the important points. All right? So, good. If you have any questions, consult me or circlemanager.java, which is a good, example of this. But let's just see if we can get the calculator, how much of the calculator we can get working. Button 2, button 3, button plus, button minus, button EQ. We need integers for display, store, and opcode. There we go. Buttons 1, 2, and 3, opcodes P, M, and E. Should have done this before copying it. Alright. Number of buttons. Display is equal to display times 10 plus 1. Or not 1, yes, 1 in this case. I think it's useful to write an update display function. Public void update display.
Do we have to initialize the display first?
We most certainly will. So I need a text field, tf out, tf out is equal to new text field, add that as well. There we go. Tf out dot set text display. There we go. Shorthand for string conversion in Java. Then buttons, update display. Opcode, operation buttons do not except for equals. Right? So, if we recall, the op buttons copy display to storage and store the opcode. store is equal to display. Opcode is equal to 1 for plus and 2 for minus. There we go. Then, what else do? We zero display. Finally, the equals button calculates the thing. Very simple. Switch on opcode. Case 1, break. Case 2, break. Default, break. You shouldn't have any default, but maybe whatever. So we calculate the thing. When the thing is calculated, we store it in display. So display is equal to, in the case of opcode 1, display plus storage. In this case, minus. We then update display. And perhaps you also clear some stuff, but this is going to be tight. Let me just quickly relocate these things so that they're in, visible locations. See, 40, 70, 2 and 3, plus and minus and EQ. We'll put those in the same locations on the next row. And TF will locate at 100, 10, 100, or 1070 actually. And I'm not going to be concerned about too much. Dooba 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 doop. 1.
Just a bit there.
I'm going to have time to debug this.
Added event handlers on the building.
Oh! Yeah, let's take a look at these.
They're all button 1,
Ha!
right?
That'll do it. Haste makes waste. Ta-da! And you thought I couldn't do it in 10 minutes. Ho ho!
Oh, it is 51.
Okay, I did it in
12
11
minutes, but who is counting?
I was.
Hey, I took a couple of minutes out of those to
Yeah.
do the others, so actually I got it in.
Could you scroll back down to the top, please?
I can, yes. I will also post
Just
all
pub-
of this
yes,
code.
just publish
Thank you
that
so
for us,
much.
please.
Yeah.
You couldn't follow up with the 10-minute part, but the rest of the
I
part.
can do that.
That's it. Make this-
You can do things quickly if you know what you're doing.
That's the logic. Make these in booleans, I just have, you have to make it in its own.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and attention today. We will resume on Friday. Question? Is this for? Oh, yeah. Any general questions? Have a good week. Basically, whatever remains of it.
How hard is it? And what if I press my button? It's only sending an action event to you. What if I wanted to send parameters for that method? It's
I
very
was right that way.
difficult.
You need lambdas.
Yeah.
What you need to do is you need to create an inline function which,
Yeah, IntelliJ wants to do that for me, but I don't exactly know what I'm doing yet, so.
okay, very quickly. What you do is you write like function taking one, like A and B, right? Then you write a lambda
Yeah.
x, which calls function with x, and then whatever your provided.
Okay.
Parameter is.
That's way beyond what I thought.
Yeah, it's useful to be able to do, but basically what a lambda does is it produces a function. It, like now recording. So, any questions about anything before we get started? Upcoming assignments or anything like that? Okay, I will assume no then. Just get started. Oh, I graded the assignment 3s that I had received immediately before this class. I have to say, of the people who submitted their work and it wasn't just like a blank file, which happened in one case, like everybody else got 100%, so good work. You guys are like getting better at this. Like I can see that you folks are improving, and it's very nice to see. So, we'll make programmers out of you yet. So yeah. So, my plan for today, we're kind of, oh man, let's mirror the screen again. All right. So, my plan for today was to do a little bit more practical example work with sessions. I thought it might be interesting to take our MVC architecture example that we did in class last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, integrate some sessions stuff to it. We are basically building our way up to user authentication, which we are covering next week. But it might be useful to see how we might use a session and have that interact with a database, right? So, in general, I was going to close the outer one for the sound, but it had the lock, it seems to be. This one works though.
Since we're not locked in.
Locked in during a snowstorm. No, we'll be fine. So, okay. So user authentication then. Obviously, like I don't need to tell you guys, hopefully, how important user validation and login systems are, right? Login systems are everywhere. They are one of the primary things you have to know about if you're going to be developing a web application, particularly one that handles sensitive data. which is of course the object and purpose of all of you in this digital health program right now. You're going to be handling patient information or medical information or something that's sensitive, right? So we need login systems. So the login session itself is maintained with a session in PHP. Whether we establish that session or not, that will depend on whether the user is able to authenticate and log in, right? So, rough sketch. When we talk about user authentication, what we are actually intending to do is to compare. Hey, welcome. Sorry, the outer door is broken, the lock, so
Oh.
I closed that one for the sound.
I was like, am I in the right spot or no?
You are. You're in the right place, and at the right time. Hopefully for the right duration. So essentially, how it's typically done, in your database, you will have a special table that is for the users of your system program, a credentials table, right? Whether you want to, add a column to that table saying this person is a nurse, this person is a doctor, this person is a user, this person is an administrator, this person is an owner of this, that, and the other. That's all secondary considerations. You can add that in reasonably easily, but bare minimum, we need to associate usernames with passwords, right? So let's fire up XAMPP, let's fire up Apache and MySQL. And I'm going to go through, we're going to take the MVC example that we did in class, and we're going to, we're gonna work with that, we're gonna modify it. htdocs. Now, I think that was, not that one. Yes. So, in htdocs, please take our archive from the 8th of March and copy that, paste it, rename it to reflect today's date, which is the 22nd. Oh my goodness, we're most of the way through March. Can you believe it? There we go. So, if you recall, we have model view controller architecture, model view controller, and app.config. The purpose of copying a lot of this over is so that we don't have to redo all of this information. So, let's imagine, just for the sake of interest, that you had to log in to be able to view the medicines that are in stock at the hospital, which seems reasonable, right?
Controlled by fingerprint.
Yep, there you go. Is it really? Oh, cool. Biometrics.
So whoever orders their fingerprints are copied?
Well,
Like-
depending on your fingerprint, it gives you access to certain drawers.
Oh, okay.
So let's also launch VS Code. No, this is not. That was from previous.
The lowest level.
So, going to open a folder, open specifically the folder that we were just taking a look at, XAMPP, htdocs, there we go, select, I trust myself, yes. So, So let's remind ourselves how this architecture works, right? When the website is requested, what is the top level PHP file in MVC architecture which is being requested by the client?
The controller.
Correct, the controller. The controller includes all of the other PHP files and runs them, but everything is coming from the controller. So there's a common misconception, right? Or it's easy to fall into this trap, right? In theory, you think, oh, I want to establish a login session, right? Which means that I should call session start after I've received the user's credentials and validated them against the database, right? Logically, that's how you would think it would go, right? Well, it's actually easier to just establish the session and keep a variable inside of the session which indicates whether the session has been validated or not, and as whom, right? So, rather than only calling session start once a user has been validated, we can check to see if the user is validated before they've even entered login information, right? So, and obviously, you know, this is programming, so there are like 10 million ways to do this, but this is the way that I'm choosing to show you. So, with starting sessions, we always call start session right at the top of the file, before we do anything else, or more particularly, before anything else is printed. Although, I think that wasn't the case last time, but anyway, we're gonna do it that way. Start session.
Dr. Moore,
Yeah.
as you're going here, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to modify the code so that it thinks you've been authenticated even though you haven't entered any information? You steal the session, you modify the session so that it thinks you've already been authenticated. Is that
Excellent
is
question.
that a thing?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's an excellent question. So the question is it possible for the client to make the session think that it's been validated when it hasn't? The answer to this question is no, because the values stored in the session superglobal are never interacted with directly by the client. They are stored on the server. Any interaction with it is through your PHP code. So, in order for the end user to be able to bypass login validation, you would have to provide them something like a checkbox that says bypass login validation, please, which you're probably not going to do, right? At least maybe for debugging purposes, but you'd be a fool to allow that through to your final release of the software. So, start session. Is it session start? It's probably session start. Yeah. There we go. So, once we have started the session, we now have access to the session superglobal. At the moment, nothing has yet been stored in it, right? But we will store important information in this, such as, has this user, is this a authenticated session? So, on initial, once we initiate the session, it's empty, it's blank, it doesn't contain anything. We can tell whether or not the session contains a variable indicating whether or not you're authenticated by using isSet. So let's imagine once the user becomes authenticated, we want to set a user variable inside of the session superglobal to the username of the logged in user, right? If that doesn't exist, there is no user logged in, right? This view should only be visible to logged in users, right?
Yep.
So this is where we kind of enter into this third piece of MVC architecture that we haven't had a good example of yet in class, which is you select the view based on the program state as well. Until now, we've always been running through like just this one view, right? But if the user is not logged in, what should they see?
They should see login information.
They should see a login page, precisely. So, if isSet session at user, then we can show them, you know, the proper screen. Otherwise, we include a different one, maybe login.view.php. Now, technically speaking, I should probably gate most of this away if the user's not logged in. It doesn't make sense to take and process database inputs from GET requests, right, if the user's not actually logged in. So,
So then you have to create another file and,
well, not necessarily.
no?
What I could do is, well, there are several ways of doing this, but I think probably the most immediate is to just do that,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You still want to create your TPL, right? But you kind of want to have logged in mode and non-logged in mode, right? Is this making sense? Good. So, and because of the way that we've configured this program, we don't have to worry about modifying the model at all, right? All the model is a bunch of function definitions. Those functions aren't actually called in the model, although connection to the database is established in this case and not used, right? If you want, you can go into your configuration and slip one of those in as well. If isSet session at user, then do all of this stuff, right? That is to say, if the user is not set in the session, do not establish a connection to the database, right? If nothing else, it costs time to do so, right? So don't do unnecessary work because a logged in user should have no access to the database, right? Make sense? Good. Yes?
Just to ask you, I don't have access to those files, so.
Oh, for assignment 3? You don't have access to?
No, assignment 3.
Which files are you
This
talking
file
about?
here, Cyrus, from March
Four.
22nd. This isn't an assignment.
Oh, this is not.
Oh, no, yeah, no.
Okay.
So I've been uploading these to the modules. If you
Okay.
go to like a couple of weeks back, sorry. If you go a couple of weeks back in the modules, to the 8th, there's a zip file, 2024-3-8. If you unzip that, that will have
That's-
all of this in it, yeah. The thing I'm working from. Good. So,
This is from March 8th, he said, right?
yes, correct. So, good. No trouble. So now, we need a login.view.php. Now, although it's a .php file, there's no technical actual requirement for it to contain any PHP tags. It could just be straight HTML, which I think is where we're going with this at the moment, right? So, let us create login.view.php. Now, HTML boilerplate, go. Log into medicine database. I'm sure you're all sick to death of forms, HTML forms by now, but it is the most effective and efficient way to send this kind of data. So let us make an HTML form to take login information. Form method will be post, yeah. Action, what should we be targeting?
User.
Always target the controller, right? Yeah. So, where is it? my.ctrl.php. There we go. And form. So, we only need two things. We need a login and a password, or a username and password field. So input type is text. Name will be user name. Password. Input type is equal to C. Now, text. I will probably go for text eventually for debugging purposes so you guys can see what's going on. But you also have a password input type, which if you didn't know about that already, this is an input type that asterisks out all of your password characters. So you don't, like, that's not people doing that in JavaScript, there's just an element for that. Name will be password. And we will want a submit button. Input type is equal to submit. That should say log in. And or no, I'm sorry, yeah, it's value is the text on the button in this case. Value is log in. There we go. Nice, quick, easy. There we go. Save. Save. And now let us access the web page and see what we get. Localhost 1080/2024-03-22. There we go. Here's our directory on the server. let's access my.control.php, and you can see that rather than being brought to the database view, we have been brought instead to the password view, which of course is quite basic and doesn't look nice, but you know, this is a programming example, not a prettiness example. Make sense? So, let's take a look at our network tab. Username is Mr. Krabs123. Password is money. It's a SpongeBob SquarePants joke that usually lands because normally there are more young people in the audience than this, but I don't know. I'm still going to use it. So, there we go. We send our request. You can see that we have not been kicked into the database view because, you know, although we have the session established, there's nothing validating the session and setting the user to Mr. Krabs, right? But we did successfully send our packet. Our payload has username and password as these two values. Make sense? So far, so good. So the next thing is we need to modify our existing code so as to establish login, right? So, for the time being, let's just skip the database part and assume that anytime somebody clicks login, they were successfully logged in. Does that make sense? So, in not logged in mode, and this is logged in mode, right? So in not logged in mode, we will get two different types of requests for this page. Requests that contain login credentials and requests that do not contain login credentials, right? So, we can access this by taking a look at the post superglobal and seeing if the values that were coming in are set or not, right? So, if is set post at username and is set post at password, echo, this was an attempt to log in. Else, echo, this was not an attempt to log in. Right? So, if I refresh the page, that resends the same packet, including the username and password. So you can see this was an attempt to log in, because that's included. But if I press enter and re-enter the URL from the address bar, this was not an attempt to log in, because if you take a look at the contents of the packet, there's nothing here that's, that's just what this is, right? There were no parameters sent. You don't even get the tab, right? So, there we go. This this was an attempt to log in. So that's one way of doing it. Now you'll notice I'm doing a thing that that looks a bit like a thing I told you never to do, right? Which is direct access of things from the superglobal. Because I'm merely using them to pass into isSet, there's no way that any scripting attack could enter my program if I do things this way. Like, I'm not yet reading the variables, I'm just reading for the presence of the variables. So in this case, this is allowable, right? But if you're going to use the actual contents of the values sent, you absolutely need to do your filtering. Otherwise, you're leaving yourself open to cross-site scripting attacks. Sound right? Sound good? So, in the case where it's not an attempt to log in, right? It's correct to include login.view.php, right? We want to show the login page if you access this page without trying to log in, right? If it is an attempt to log in, that has one of two consequences, right? The first consequence is login was successful. The second is login was failure, or login failed. If login is successful, which page should we show?
View.
Yes, this guy.
The view, yeah.
Yeah.
My view.
If login was not successful, what should we do?
We should basically do the same thing that try to log in again, or enter your credential or something like that. Go back to the login page.
Mm-hmm. Right, we need to reissue the login page. So, let's use our TPL. If TPL at login success, then we want to show or include my.view.php. Otherwise, we want to show the other one. Include login.view.php. Right? This is making sense, right? The advantage of using the TPL is that we can design our code in whatever manner makes sense to us logically. We don't have to start at the top and go down to the bottom. We can say, I am, right here, I just made a promise to myself that I would write some code that populates login success. As long as I keep that promise to myself, everything's fine, right? So, we can also throw something into the login a PHP tag if TPL, if not TPL at login success, then echo paragraph style is equal to color red. Escape those quotes. Login failure and paragraph. So now we are using the TPL a little bit inside of the login page, just for the purpose of telling the user whether or not they successfully logged in, right? Set it once, use it many times. So, presumably, when we log in, right, we want to check the database to make sure our credentials are correct. Let's just leave that off for the time being, and let's write a method for it. So, a login check, right? Code which performs a login check. Is that model, view, or controller?
It's control.
So I want to insert some code, I want to put something in which interacts with the database in order to check a login. We've got MVC architecture, M model, V view, C controller. Which of those three should that be in?
Function within the model.
It goes in the model. The model is the thing that actually performs database queries. So let's make a function for it in the model. Function check login. We should pass into it username and password, right? At the moment, we're not going to do any database querying. Let's just have it so that anytime somebody logs in, anytime anybody attempts, it just allows them, you know. So, skipping database check for now. When somebody is logged in, we set the user field in the session to the username. Right? In the TPL, we then set login successful. Login success, I think I called it.
Yep.
To true. Right? And you can see how, depending on how our database query comes back, this is the success case, right? The failure case, it will be something like, you know, you don't set the session variable TPL at login success will be false, right? This is making sense, right? Not only that though, it would be convenient if check login returned a Boolean value indicating whether or not it succeeded or failed. Even apart from login success, this can be useful sort of at a local level, so it's kind of just good practice. Return true on success, return false on failure. Right? So we can now call check login from our controller, but we are left with what do we put here? Right? We need our parameters. Our parameters are being read from our post packet the same way that we do right up there. In this case, both of them are strings, so both will be filtering for special characters. U and P, username, and password. There we go. We then provide U, and we provide P. Yes?
Where does username come from?
It comes from here. So when you perform a login, it's sending key value pairs. The keys originate in the HTML form, but this is the name that it's looking for in filter input. Does that make sense? So if you're having trouble with that, and that's actually a fairly common problem people have, always check your packet, right? Cool. Anyway, I gotta give a midterm this afternoon. So,
Sorry?
for a different class, I'm giving a midterm this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering if they were gonna like cancel school for half the day, and that would like, you know, what happened.
It's kind of late for a midterm.
Well, the class, it's an in-class midterm. Yeah, you mean like in the semester? Yeah, they already had one. It's a second midterm, so kind of.
That's not bad.
I do agree, though. It's like so close to exams, you know. But I don't know. It's Java. It takes a little bit to get the course, up and rolling in the first place.
Talking about midterm, Professor, did you tell them that I will be using my computer?
Yes, yeah, I filled all of the stuff out.
Perfect, thanks.
If they give you any trouble, just tell them to call me.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
So, shall we see how this works? Oh, undefined index. Let's see, online system, login button. Okay.
Line 16.
Oh, yes. So, the issue is that login success is not being put forward here, right? In the I didn't attempt to log in at all case. So, let's put another if statement in. If TPL, if is set TPL at login success. Right? Because if it's not set, then there was no attempted login, which means we shouldn't be displaying login failure either, right? So, there we go. Now, let's attempt to log in. Log in. This was an attempt to log in. We're having more of it, eh? Undefined index, login success, line 36, or 38, pardon me. So, check login.
Aren't the variables supposed to be user and password?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Instead of U and P?
Well, at this level it doesn't,
Doesn't matter?
these variables are local in here, right? So I pass them in as variables to check login. Login, let's take a look at the model. Did I save the model? Save. Login success. Let's Let's, in cases like this, it's useful to just put a little echo JSON encode TPL in there, just to see what the TPL is doing. Oh, connection failed. Unknown database hospital. Well, yes. Oh. Oh, that actually means success. This means that we're viewing the database page, right? So that's actually a success condition. We've gotten past the login page. So, for example, looking at my.view.php, perhaps we throw in here a little paragraph that says, welcome. Session at username. Right? This should print. No, it's gonna complain about the database. I need to set up the database now, ever so briefly. I know we're running out of time, but PHP admin. Maybe a little less aggressive on Zoom there. My goodness. So we need to make the new database called hospital, create, and import the file that we saved from previously, examp, htdocs, here we go, medicines.sql, open, go! Processing, there we go, we have our medicines database back. Now, there we go. We have everything back, and that's our data from earlier. And you can see,
Mr. Krabs.
yeah, welcome, Mr. Krabs. So there you go. We have 3 minutes left in class. Not enough time for me to make the credentials table in the database, but this is how a session interacts, right? Like now, I can refresh the page as many times as I want. I'm not back to the login page. If I copy the URL, close the tab, open it up, try again, I'm brought back to the medicines page. I don't have to re-log in, right? It's in a session cookie, and as long as that session cookie is valid, Mr. Krabs is logged in and doesn't have to re-authenticate. Make sense?
And when does the session cookie in the
21 minutes, unless it's refreshed. So it's 21 minutes from the last time the page was loaded. That's how much time the session cookie has. Unless we put in a logout button, which honestly, probably not a bad idea.
yeah, so how can I modify the time? The short time? Slept and forgot. There was like so much leaves. Was in class was good. Stuff with the slides and stuff.
Sure. All of these people in this article seem to say something to the effect of do it manually then. Yeah, apparently the default expiry is not easy to set, so. Yeah, like you can get the same effect with a permanent cookie, because you, with just plain cookies, you do have, like, one of the parameters in it is, that's,
Professor, can you upload that file?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
I should have, our session started. I should have checked this first. Array options. Session configuration directives. Okay, this is looking. Max lifetime. Ah, there it is. Just set that. There you go. These are all of the different session parameters that you can set. So, right there. Session max lifetime.
Unit is second, or a millisecond?
Let's see. Specifies the number of seconds after which the data was being done. Yeah, everything is using Unix epoch time, which is measured in seconds. So yeah, seconds. Okay, good. Thank you everybody for a wonderful session today.
What is the session of the bar distro function?
Oh, that deletes the session data in the server, including the entry. So that's how you log out, is session destroy. Zip!
Professor, you were not able to see my PHP file?
No, your archive that you sent was just empty.
Oh, really?
It has like one file in it that was only like 700 bytes, and it was a bunch of garbage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Let me send it to you.
please do. I'm happy to mark it. I just need it.
Yeah. What happened was like I uploaded in my Excel and I copied from there, so it could be because of that.
I
deleted it.
I cannot say why. All I can
hope
say
I
is
didn't
that I
delete
didn't get
mine.
it. There we go. All right, uploaded.
Thank you.
I really like this example, so I think we're gonna keep working on it next week when we do the table. Good, wonderful, excellent.
Professor, assignment 5 actually are 2 types of assignment 5.
Yeah, there's like an easy one and a hard one. No penalty for doing the easy one.
Dr. Moore?
Yeah?
The one you're classifying as a hard one,
Mm-hmm.
is it really hard? It doesn't look hard. It's basically, we've already done that in the assignment before.
Well, maybe you're a better group than last year.
Okay, I'm gonna have another look at it. Maybe I missed something.
To be honest, I have not yet had the opportunity to have a close look at these, so.
It looks very similar.
Like, I hope you'll find that like in this class, there's been reasonable concordance between the material that's been done in lecture, the practice material, the test, and the assignment, you know? I hope that you found that, because I have been finding that.